Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about the standard metagame. And as with all of my metagames, technically this is a winner's metagame because Magic Online only posts top 32s of challenges, but it's still reflective of the overall metagame. Let's take a look at standard. At the very top is Esper Self-Bounce, to nobody's surprise. In second, Mono Red. In third, Gruul Prowess. Fourth, Dimir Midrange, and closing it up is Golgari midrange. If you want to take a look at this graph, you can go ahead and pause the video. But let's talk about these decks, starting with Golgari midrange. Golgari midrange is exactly what it says on the tin. It's looking to 1-for-1 their opponent by attacking their hand and removing creatures and permanents, playing difficult to answer creatures like Mosswood Dread Knight and Thrun, creatures that let you draw cards and get other giant advantages like Preacher of the Schism, and eventually outvalue their opponent. It's an incredibly powerful deck. And fourth is Dimir midrange. It's doing the strategy that Golgari is, answering 1-for-1, playing these creatures that do a little bit more. However, this deck is a little bit more focused on attacking. They stop their opponent from blocking with cards like Floodpits Drowner. They punish their opponent for drawing cards with cards like Fairy Mastermind. They continually pressure the opponent's hand with Deep Cavern Bat, and then really close the door by getting an insane amount of card advantage with Kaido and Enduring Curiosity. So it's an aggressively slanted mid-range deck that's really rewarded for being the aggressor and attacking, but still gets giant advantages in other ways. Gruul Prowess was the premier aggressive deck of the format, but I guess Mono Red is now. But Gruul Prowess is essentially a Mono Red deck that splashes green for some sideboard cards, Questing Druid, and sometimes pump spells and Innkeeper's Talents. It is extremely aggressively slanted. Mostly it is a mice strategy, where you're rewarded for targeting Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger with cards like Manifold Mouse and your pump spells and Rockface Village and whatnot. If you have no interaction or time your interaction poorly, you've just died to this deck. The second most popular deck, and now the premier aggro deck of the format, is Mono Red. Mono Red is doing something really similar to the Gruul deck, except doesn't care about those green sideboard cards, doesn't care about those green pump spells. Instead, we're running burn spells over it, more removal, Screaming Nemesis, all of that stuff. It still has the mice synergies, but just leaning into not doing anything cutesy and just beating their opponent. This version also allows you to play Soulstone Sanctuary and Rockface Village, which are both very powerful cards. And then the most popular deck in Standard is Esper Self-Bounce, also known as Esper Pixie. What this deck is trying to do is it has a lot of permanents that do beneficial things when they enter the battlefield, especially cheap permanents that do beneficial things when they enter the battlefield. And then they have a lot of permanents like Fear of Isolation and Nurturing Pixie that have this downside where they have to return something to their hand, or this down ain't big enough. That costs less if you target one of your own things and it returns things to hand. And this deck, it turns that downside into an upside because we're running a bunch of permanents that we want to return to our hand so that we can enter the battlefield again and do those effects again. This generates a crazy amount of card advantage once the engine gets going, and it's actually very easy to get the engine going and can kill sort of out of nowhere with prowess triggers from the Otters, from Stormcatcher's Talent, and just 1-for-1 their opponent, attacking their hand with Hopeless Nightmare, etc., etc. But that is the standard metagame. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Oh, I like burped halfway through that.